welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episodes 262 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we'll be discussing chapter 36 of A Feast for Crows. That's Cersei 8.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. Unless, of course, you have a Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tier that includes spoilers, then we will spoil things for you. Regardless, hopefully we'll provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge a little pedantry and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes, they'll provide some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing all right. It's a mixed bag in my life right now. As we're 2 weeks into this dual bathroom renovation project.
Oh, right, yeah.
Still, the vanities are in. Still no faucets to attach to them. The in the bathroom we call Ethan's bathroom, which is mostly a guest bathroom these days. We wanted to replace the shower hardware kit, because this is old 90s brass. We wanted to replace it with something newer. Turns out the brand of shower component that's in there is no longer made. So in order to do that, a plumber has to come in through the back wall, change out the valve, and then put on a new trim kit. Not just a matter of me replacing the hardware, the physical stuff you can see with new physical stuff you can see. So that was nearly $1,000, which we've decided not to. So instead, Stacey is spray painting the existing trim kit in matte black, and then we'll put on a new shower head. So we went from high budget to really low budget.
Well, at least she bought into the low budget thing. I worry that Stacey will stick to her guns.
So it's been, how it is when you're doing renovations. One step forward, one step backward. One unexpected step backward. And we're still coming along. Our marriage has stayed intact thus far. We'll see if we can make it.
Well done. That's the big trick here.
But there's positives too. Tomorrow's Halloween. Ethan's coming into town. We're flying him in, so it's very exciting. He'll be here for the weekend. It's alumni weekend at the university he went to for his undergrad, and so we might not see him as much as we had expected.
I was just thinking about Ethan the other day, actually, that I saw him at his university when he was an undergrad. And,
yes, you did. Yeah.
Yeah, he came to see us when we visited his town, and it was really nice. And I was thinking about that because I was talking to Lucas about his future and university and things like that, and how university life is an experience that not to be missed.
Right? Yeah, and it comes and goes. Like it's a short chunk of your life that is like nothing else in your life for the most part.
Yeah, Lucas was sort of theorizing doing his bachelor's later in life, and I was like, yeah, you could, but you miss out on this. You have this window of your life where you're free to do whatever you want and enjoy it,
Yeah.
And if you do the same thing in your 30s, you'll probably have responsibilities that you don't have now, and it won't be the same.
Right, absolutely.
You'll miss out.
Yeah, that I would agree with that assessment. Although you're referring to his previous school, he transferred before his junior year.
That's right. Yeah. I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah.
But it was nice seeing him there, actually. It was strange to see him in a context other than at your house,
When you saw him, he had a horrible concussion, did he not?
That's right. That's when he had the concussion, of course. He doesn't remember this at all.
No, he has no recollection of seeing you.
So we've been talking for a little while, and I've been looking at our... So listeners, how the sausage is made. We have a little section here called Witty Banter, and it often has sort of like little cues to remind us of things to say.
Yes, yeah.
Quite often we start the podcast with nothing there at all, and we have to just wing it. But today there are the words Simon voting. And this whole time we've been talking, I've been racking my brains what the heck the story was about Simon voting. But I've come up with it.
Okay, good. All right.
I have remembered what it was.
Close one.
as everybody knows, because we've talked about it, I am an American citizen these days, and so I'm eligible to vote. And
Yes.
I did my civic duty, and I went and voted early, in fact, and
As
so
did
I
I.
have voted. But um, this is different from the UK. On the way into voting, you walk a gauntlet of people trying to win your vote. At least
Yes, you do.
in
Yeah.
in the early voting.
It is a gauntlet. It absolutely is.
Mhm.
Yes.
But the thing was, there's a lot of things to vote for, and you really need a sort of crib sheet because otherwise, you don't know who to vote for because there's a lot of races that we vote for.
Yes.
And Carson had helped me out, and I had basically a piece of paper with it, all the people I was voting for written out. And as I was walking along, through the gauntlet, a guy stopped me and he said, "Hey, I'm a socialist standing for city council or something like that." And I was like, "Oh, well," I said, "as a British person, I'm not opposed to that word. So why don't you tell me what you're standing for?" Sort of. I said, "Americans seem to shy from the word socialist, but I'm British." And then I realized I was just telling this guy that I wasn't eligible to vote.
And
So
he's totally lost interest in you.
it dawned on me, but the only reason to be going past him was to vote. So I was like, just to be clear, I am eligible to vote. I just, I was born British, sort of. But he and like two other candidates near him were covering their ears, like, "Oh my God, it's true. There's voter fraud everywhere."
Right. Oh, goodness.
But yeah, so I got through it and I voted and I got a sticker and
Okay.
and
Good for you.
Carson, Carson's one of my favorite people.
I would imagine so.
She was part of this gauntlet, but she was doing something really nice. She had a booth set up for children because a lot of people go to vote with their kids and the kids aren't really allowed in the voting area. But she had like toys and activities for kids, and parents with kids of the right age could
Right.
leave their kids outside to like get like stick on tattoos and do a
Yeah.
puzzle.
That is
And
very
so
nice.
that's what. So I sat with Carson for a little while and did that, which
All right.
it turned out after the fact Carson was expecting me to do, but I was not expecting to do.
What tattoo did you get?
I got a tattoo. The organization is called Mums Rising, so I got a big M on my arm.
All right.
And actually, do you know what? It's funny you should ask about the tattoo because when we first put the tattoo on, we didn't know that it had like a plastic cover on it. So it didn't really stick.
No,
Not
I
as
bet
well as
it
we
wouldn't.
thought. No amount of water and pressing could get that thing to really stick to my skin.
Some tape, maybe some duct tape.
Once we took the plastic cover off, stuck just fine.
I bet. Yeah, that's funny how that works.
Well, anyway, enough of this frivolity. Let's get down to business. How did we leave Cersei Lannister?
Speaking of governing.
Exactly. Speaking of people who aren't going to get many votes, last we saw of Cersei, she was refusing to help the Tyrells regain the Shield Islands, insisting that the Red Wine fleet maintain its blockade of Dragonstone. This stance caused Loras Tyrell to volunteer to break the siege of Dragonstone, to Cersei's great delight. Less delightful is the news that Balman Birch failed to assassinate Bronn as requested. Indeed, he challenged the former sellsword to a duel, which he promptly lost, along with his life, but not before confessing that he was acting on Cersei's orders.
Oh boy.
Cersei finds accommodation for the stricken widow Felice in Qyburn's cells. In bed with Tane and Merryweather afterwards, Cersei forces herself on the woman, but loses interest when her companion acquiesces. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
All right. Well, the sweet Cersei arrives on the evening tide.
That's a boat. By the way.
Yes, it is.
It's not the lady. She never gets
No.
confused with the boat.
Sweet is rarely used to describe Cersei. In Aurane Waters, Grand Admiral attends to Queen Cersei. That is the queen. Dragonstone has fallen. She's so excited she kisses him on both cheeks. The Red Wine fleet can now round the continent to defend the Reach from the Greyjoys, who are using their new Shield Island outpost as launch pads for assault on more vital targets in the Reach. Waters confirms that Lord Paxter is already en route. Cersei inquires after Sir Loras. The Grand Admiral loses his smile. He'd never seen a braver knight, but he turned a bloodless victory into slaughter, and paid with his life, it seems. He'd received so many wounds that the maesters can't even leech him.
Cersei is sad, as will be King Tommen and the small folk. Over dinner, she has Aurane provide the details of Loras' downfall. She decides to tell Margaery Tyrell herself. Loras couldn't wait for completion of a tunnel beneath the walls. A ram brought down the gate and he was first into the breach, but various wounds and boiling oil have clearly brought his end. Dying is not dead, insists Margaery Tyrell, who sends Cersei away. Tyenna Merryweather did not appear that night, and Cersei is restless. She thinks that Tywin would approve of her plotting. This was Loras' own doing, after all. Margaery weeps the tears she should have wept for Joffrey, and Mace Tyrell has no reason to break the alliance.
In the morning, Tyenna appears. She's been consoling Margaery, who plans to send her own maester to Dragonstone. Osmond Kettleblack announces that 4 have come about the imp, 1 with a head. The Tyrashi is unctuous toward Cersei and announces with a flourish that he brings her the head of her Valanquar. The word is a trigger for Cersei, and, to top it off, the head isn't Tyrion's. She sends the man to Qyburn. The other 3 are equally useless. She then walks with Tyenna to the throne room. Her attendant suggests that they play hooky and see a magician who can turn girls into boys. Wouldn't it be fun to be a boy for a day? Only if Tyenna stays a woman. With that, they head to the throne room.
First up is Jalabar Jo. His usual plea, the help to regain the Red Flower Vale, was deflected the way it always is, fighting our own wars next year maybe. Pyromancer Halim wants any dragon eggs found on Dragonstone so he can try to hatch them. A group of merchants want help from the crown because the Iron Bank of Braavos is putting the squeeze on them. Cersei thinks that she needs her own bank, but for now the merchants will just have to pay their own debts. A delegation from the Faith, led by Septon Reynard, but including her cousin Lancel Lannister, was next. They want the brothels closed, but Cersei wants and needs those taxes.
Grand Maester Pycelle reports that Giles Rosby is too sick to attend her and may soon die. Cersei doesn't like this. Any opening on the small council is an opportunity for the Tyrells to impose. She sends Pycelle to keep Rosby alive. After a monotonous day of hearing sob stories, she eats dinner with Tommen. She describes ruling as being pecked at by a murder of crows, but he wants it. Margaery says, "A deal too much," Cersei interjects. She would like to cut that tongue out. Tommen gets angry at this. "You don't touch her." Cersei is astonished. She grabs him by the ear and has Sir Boris escort him to his room and to fetch Pate, who will be whipped by Tommen himself.
That night, Cersei dreams an old dream. 3 girls visiting a witch. The dream diverges from the memory, but the key points remain. Dreaming Cersei beseeches the girls to not go in. Inside the tent, it's a witch's den. When the witch awakes, Jane Farman screams and leaves. She was the wise one, realizes Cersei. Rumour was that Maggy the Frog had been beautiful, but she wasn't anymore. She tries to send the girls away, but they want their futures. Maggy sucks blood from their fingers and offers them each 3 questions.
When will I wed the prince?
Never. You will wed the king.
I will be queen, though.
Aye, queen you shall be, until there comes another, younger and more beautiful, to cast you down and take all that you hold dear.
If she tries, I'll have my brother kill her. Will the king and I have children?
Oh, aye, 6 and 10 for him, and 3 for you. Gold shall be their crowns, and gold their shrouds, and when your tears have drowned you, the Valanquar shall wrap his hands about your pale white throat and choke the life from you.
And scene.
We were good there. I like that.
Melara wants to know if she will marry Jaime. Cersei could have answered that one. Maggy instead predicts her virginal death. The girls flee. Cersei fixates on the hands wrapped around her throat and wakes to find her blankets wrapped around her neck. She calls for Pycelle. She wants something to help her sleep without dreams. He can help with that. They then speak of fortune-telling, and he warns that knowledge of the future is probably a bad idea. She sends him away in disgust. Next morning, Tommen is subdued. She thinks that she would kill the whole realm to protect him.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
She next sends for Qyburn. Tanda Stokeworth has died, and Cersei considers sending Felice back home to keep the seat from Loras and Bronn. Bad news there, she's in no fit state and never will be again. No matter. She speaks of a dream, and he encourages her to discount the witch's words, but she describes Melara's untimely demise and the uncanny predictions that have already come true. She's worried about the younger queen and wants to forestall the prophecy. Qyburn knows how. Cersei is unsure.
What she needs is cast iron evidence to bring Margaery down. Anyone willing to admit to an affair with her would lose their own head. She speaks with Osmond Kettleblack. She wants to know if his brother Osney is good enough to defeat Sir Boros Blunt. Osmond has no doubt of that. But why? Has Boros committed the treason? No, Cersei assures Osmond. But Osney has, she thinks.
I kind of like doing the sort of scripted thing, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily mean for you to be Cersei, but you did a good job of it, I thought.
Well, you put the M in there next to Cersei's line, so I figured you meant me.
I know, yeah. I realize in retrospect that I made you Cersei, but, you know, it worked. I thought we were
Yeah,
good.
I thought so too.
So, I will say Cersei's plan around Loras, the Shield Islands, Dragonstone, the Red Wine Fleet has gone perfectly.
It really has.
Unusually for one of Cersei's plans.
Yeah. I mean, the fall of Dragonstone, it's not good for Stannis, but basically it was an abandoned castle anyway, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
He didn't have plans on returning anytime soon.
Yeah.
But
I will say to that though, it was a base of operations for him. If he was planning to come back, and Cersei doesn't know his plans, he might have been coming back. It was a place where he could have, you know, come back to. Now it isn't.
Right. Yeah. It's one less option for him.
Right.
And it's a long way from the Wall to Storm's End. So,
indeed,
it would have been a nice stopping point to take a little breather.
Yeah.
Especially with all the storms in the narrow sea right now.
Right. Indeed.
But Loras, that's a different story. I mean, that is pure gold, pure gold for a Lannister, pure gold for Cersei.
Yeah. And she can, she's got clean hands. She did not do this. This was all Loras.
Right.
I mean, those of us reading the books, we know that she was denying them the help for the Shield Islands to try and encourage something like this. But he took it on himself. He didn't have to do it.
That's right. She was so excited about the news, she wanted Aurane to tell her the story twice so that she would commit all the details to memory.
Yeah. I have a question about that later, actually.
Okay, all right. Mm-hmm. But she and Aurane are kind of talking about how the small folk will be really sad to learn of the news of Loras, and she's recalling that the huge crowd that was there to see Loras off, and she was thinking about how fools they were, because 3 out of 4 were women, and she was thinking all you're going to get from him is a smile and a rose. But Jaime noticed kind of the same thing in opposite when he and his force left King's Landing. He noticed that hardly anybody was there to see him off, and he remembered that when Mace left, there was also a huge turnout to see him leave, and he thought that the fact that the small folk in King's Landing prefer the rose over the lion is something that Cersei would do well to take note of.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a very good point to raise, because that's basically 3 times forces have left King's Landing to do something. Twice the small folk have seen them off. And that's both times it was when the Tyrells were leading them. And once it was when Jaime led them and nothing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that just reinforces what he's saying, Jaime, that she'd be wise to pay attention to this, that the small folk care about the Tyrells.
But one thing we know about Cersei is she doesn't think about the small folk. She doesn't factor them into her life.
Other than when they offend her.
Right.
That's all she cares about, yeah.
Yes.
But I will say to Loras, I mean, I always thought Loras was like overly rash here to get involved, but the threat to the Reach was worse than we speculated about last time we talked about this, because the Shield Islands proved to be a launch pad for raids up the Mander and up the Whispering Sound towards Old Town.
Yeah.
And so he did have a point. There was serious jeopardy to the Reach, more serious than we realized. So his trying to break the blockade to allow the Red Wine Fleet to go home and protect the Reach did have some merit.
Yeah. And he mentioned when he and Margaery were beseeching Cersei to do something about it, he said they could even possibly reach as far inland as Highgarden, and that that was a concern. Highgarden's a pretty big castle, but still, there's plenty of stops along the way that are vulnerable.
Right, and we somewhat discounted it because they had the land forces, but it proved what we heard in this chapter was that the raids were having an effect on the Reach, and so getting this stopped was something that the Tyrells would certainly want to happen.
Yeah.
So there's a significant flirtation going on between Cersei and Aurane Waters, but what's interesting to us now, having Cersei's POV, is that she has a sort of like a standard mixture when she's flirting with someone of outward interest, which is then completely contrasted with her inward disparaging of the person that she's interested in.
Every time. Almost every time. Person she talks to. Exactly. Even her brother.
Yes, exactly. So here's my question. I mentioned I was going to have a question before. Yeah. Does Waters know Cersei's true feelings about Loras? It seems like when you ask someone to repeat the story of their demise twice, that you're either a ghoul or you're delighted with the news.
Yeah, and I wonder, I mean, they talked into the night, like it was past dinner time. They had a meal while in the process of telling the story twice. I wonder if some of her facial reactions were betraying her true inner feelings, because you're right. She, at one point, she says, I want to be the one that tells Margaery. I don't want her to hear from someone else. And Aurane says to her, you're really sweet. I can't remember the exact wording, but basically like, that's very kind of you to do that, with a wicked smile, she thinks.
Right. And exactly, and that's the point where I was like, oh, so he knows what she really thinks about Margaery, and how actually delighted she is with this news that she's, at least on the surface, pretending to be sad about.
Right. Yeah. I thought the same thing about that smile. I thought, is she just seeing a wicked smile when really he's trying to be sincere, or is he putting together the pieces of she really wants every detail, and she keeps, she might not realize it, but she keeps smirking at the wrong and appropriate times.
Yeah. And later on, when she gives all this news to Margaery, she keeps a straight face, but she takes great delight. And Margaery certainly sees through it, because Margaery is immediately very aggressive towards Cersei and wants her, several times says, I know what your true feelings are, and kicks her out.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah. And, and it's kind of different than Sansa. Like as you were just saying, one of Cersei's ways of manipulation is false sweetness.
Right.
Which the younger Sansa, she's younger than Margaery, was much more susceptible to, up until the point where she beheaded Ned. But she tries the same thing with Margaery, and like you said, Margaery sees right through it.
Right. And then there's an interesting point here that Tyenna Merryweather is away from Cersei for 2 nights after this news lands. And she tells her where she was. She was with Margaery, consoling her for the loss of her brother. What does this tell you about the relationship between Tyenna Merryweather and Cersei? To me, it doesn't clear it up at all, because I'm still conflicted where Tyenna's ultimate loyalties lie.
Right.
It feels like on some levels this says, well, her ultimate loyalties lie with Margaery. She came back to Margaery and consoled her for 2 nights when she could have been staying with Cersei. But on the other side, if she was Margaery's spy in Cersei's inner circle, Margaery would say, no, I can cope with this without you, Tyenna. Go back to Cersei.
Yeah, so it could be the other way, too, that she is staying in Margaery's camp to find out what's going on behind the scenes.
Very true.
Or possibly Tyenna is just really enjoying Syvas. I'm pretty sure that's what they were playing when Cersei showed up. The line is like that they were playing a puzzle
Essos.
out of they were trying to puzzle out a new game from Volantis, which I believe is Syvas. So
well, I like Tyenna all the more. That's good.
So Cersei is thinking about how Tywin would finally realize he has an heir with all of the machinations that Cersei has orchestrated, and things have gone her way here, as you said, pretty much perfectly. And she's right. Loras begged for the command, which makes it hard to blame Cersei for him dying. And Margaery seems to be onto her false sweetness, but there's nothing she can point to, about it.
Yeah.
And I think it was an oddly smart move by Cersei to decide to make a martyr out of Loras. She's gonna create, gonna have a huge funeral and build a statue of him, and that's surprisingly smart of her.
Yeah, I mean, it is the natural progression of the plan. You've got to sort of like eulogize him and make him seem like he was a saint in order to keep Mace Tyrell at bay. Because if you just say, we'll get another member of the Kingsguard to replace him, then he's going to wonder why you don't care.
Yeah, she even thinks that Mace might thank her for this tribute, and is hoping that the death of Loras will cause the death of Mace's mother, Olenna, and then that would just be a cherry on top for Cersei here.
Right. Yeah. So later on, Tyenna wants Cersei to leave the governing to Harys Swift and to go incognito into the city, where they can visit this magician who can turn you into a boy for a day. Cersei mentions that she doesn't trust Harys Swift. Again, she did hire him, so her
the smallest council. We're back to that. The
smallest council, yes.
Yeah. Now remember, he was chosen as an unwitting hostage against her uncle Kevin, because
that's right.
Harys is Kevin's good father. But we sat through the day with her. It wasn't a very taxing day. It might have been tedious, but there was no decisions that really needed.
I don't know. I mean, I can just imagine the Red Wine Fleet taking Zalabarjo off to the Summer Islands.
Well, I approve that. He made such a strong plea. Exactly. He made a great case.
He's been here such a long time. It felt like we needed to do.
But I really wonder if possibly either he's completely useless, which very well he might be, or secretly she relishes this opportunity to sit in judgment and show who's running the realm.
Yeah.
Because later on in the next scene, she tells Tommen that he should thank the gods he's not old enough to rule. I promise you won't like it. Yeah. Almost like she's trying to convince him not to take an active role as long as possible, to let her have her time in the spotlight.
Yeah. We also get more evidence of the pointless brutality caused by Cersei's war on Tyrion. Sort of like so many people are getting killed because of it. She's no nearer finding him. She should call off the dogs, basically, because it's just not helping. And innocents are dying left and right.
Yep.
But
and
she won't.
We get an instance of your theory about Lannisters pay their debts when she says, you owe this dwarf a nose because the Tyrashi cut the man's nose off.
Nose off, yeah.
And she says, you owe this dwarf a nose. The Lannisters pay their debts and sends him off to Qyburn, where I'm guessing he's gonna end up wishing he was only losing a nose. But there's three other. There's the man who brought the head. He's Tyrashi, and then there's three others. And the third, I think it's the third informer.
They all have evidence of where they think Tyrion is, right? That was what they provided, right?
Yes. And I think the third informer is likely referring to the ghost of Highheart when he says, or I don't know if it's a man or a woman, but when the informer says that Tyrion is living as a hermit in the Riverlands on a haunted hill.
Oh.
The ghost of Highheart is diminutive, but an elderly woman, but she does live on a haunted hill. So I think that might be where that informer was going with that.
He's miles off base. But I will say Cersei's attitude to those three informers was quite good. She basically will send, if they will stick by their story, she'll send a contingent of knights to go and investigate it. But if they waste those knights' time, they'll pay with their lives. And all three of them are like, wait a second, I think about it, it was an old lady.
Right. Yeah.
We've spotted this for a while. I mean, it's been hinted at. We're not geniuses. It's been hinted at that there's trouble brewing in the economy as the Iron Bank of Braavos calls in its debts. The merchants who owe will have less money to invest and spend on goods and services, and that's going to lead to inflation and shortages.
Right.
That's further exacerbated the problems that are going to stem from the onrushing winter and the weak harvest caused by the troubles in the Riverlands.
Yep.
Probably Westeros relies anyway, even without its own harvest, on imports from Essos in the winter, which has a milder climate.
Right.
So all told, the Iron Bank is flexing in a way that's going to be damaging to all of Westeros.
Yep.
And Cersei does not help them. She just says, well, pay your debts,
Yeah. Yep. All stemming from her refusal to pay on the crown's debts until the war's end. And Jenna Lannister told Jaime all about this in that last Jaime chapter, that it's happening all around the realm. These merchants here aren't the select few. It's becoming a realm-wide problem. And Cersei thinks to herself that she should have her own bank. I think she calls it the Bank of Lannisport or something like that. I can't remember the exact wording, but
Golden Bank or something.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
And it's kind of when I read that, I thought it's kind of odd that they don't, considering how much gold is in Casterly Rock.
True enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's strange, I mean, like I sort of looked a little bit into sort of economic models, but there's no real parallel in our world for what would happen if an external force were to withdraw all of its money from an entire continent.
Yeah,
which is kind of what's happening here, and
right.
The Iron Bank is huge and very influential, so it could be really bad, but we'll keep an eye on it.
I think the Iron Bank decision makers are probably figuring we're going to do this to put pressure on the crown to get them to start repaying their debts. But they're overestimating how much Cersei cares about the rest of the realm. That's
true. That is true. But also, they're perhaps overestimating her ability to repay. It feels like the crown, everything we've heard of the crown's finances has been dodgy for a while, and it's not getting any better.
No, it's not. Yeah.
So the pyromancers want to hatch any dragon eggs that are found on Dragonstone. Cersei thinks that's not a very good idea, but she discounts it basically because she figures that if Stannis had found a dragon egg on Dragonstone, he would be selling it to fund his war.
Right. And I was a little bit surprised about the restraint she showed and the foresight to reject that idea, because I could certainly see her being interested in the idea of owning a dragon. It would, if there was an egg there and the pyromancers managed to hatch it, she would have undisputed claim to the Iron Throne if she, had this proof that she had a dragon.
But are you actually saying it wasn't a good idea to refuse? Because she does refuse.
She does, and I think it was a good idea. I'm surprised she showed that restraint.
No, but what you just said feels like it would be a good idea if she said, yeah, go ahead with one condition. If you manage to hatch one, it's mine.
Right. I think that's, if she did accept it, I think that is the rules she would have put around it.
Yeah.
Then Septon Reynald is the next to have an audience with her, and he shows up on the High Septon's behalf, and Lancel is part of the escort. All of this is not good for Cersei, because, first of all, she summoned the High Septon, who felt no need to heed that summons himself, and instead sent a proxy. Now, Reynald and Cersei are supposedly friends. That's what she was thinking and saying in that chapter where she went to the Great Sept of Baelor. And there she found him on his knees, cleaning, scrubbing, and all that. But on top of that, Lancel is one of the 6 warriors' sons escorting Reynald. So, through Cersei's thoughts, we learn that the warriors' sons are starting to build rather quickly. They've got a force of nearly 100 knights already, and Lancel's one of them, and he's here at court with Reynald. And I wondered if Lancel was the only lord. She mentioned that most were hedge knights and household knights. I wonder how many lords gave up their seat, lands, and wife to join this cause. And as Cersei sees Lancel, she thinks, or when she hears about it originally, I guess, she thinks that she does not like this at all, which feels dangerous for Lancel.
Yes, very much a problem. Do you think that Reynald has bought in, or is he just playing ball? I mean, obviously he was like a Cersei-like Septon prior to the elevation of the new High Septon.
Right.
But now he seems to be acting as an emissary for the new High Septon, as if he's bought into this new piety. What's your opinion on that?
I think he's playing ball.
You think that he, deep down, if he could become High Septon and be going to the brothels and getting money from Cersei, that's what he would choose?
I think so, yes. Maybe I'm being cynical, but I think that is what's going on.
That's not you, Mackelly. You're not cynical. That's my job, really.
What do you think?
I could see it either way. I don't know. It's not clear. He certainly seems to be, saying the things that the High Septon would want him to say at this point. But it does feel like he's a possible strand of influence within the upper reaches of the faith for Cersei.
Yes, if she can get him to play her game.
Yeah.
And speaking of the High Septon, Moonboy, she thinks to herself that Moonboy calls him the High Sparrow. And isn't that the term that's used in Game of Thrones? The TV show?
Yes, that's right. That's right. He is known as the High Sparrow by everyone.
Yes, I thought I remembered that. Yeah. But I was saying this is bad all around for Cersei because, like I said, High Septon didn't even bother to come when summoned, sends a proxy. Lancel shows up, which means she now has to deal with Lancel. She was worried before that Lancel was going to tell the High Septon what happened between all the things, not just the sexual things, but also the killing of the whole regicide.
The murder thing, yes.
So now she's got to worry about that again. And you got to wonder, is Lancel here? If there's already about 100 knights that have joined up, there's a 1 in 100 chance that Lancel would be part of this group. Did the High Septon send him?
Point of order. 7 in 100.
Well, okay.
6 in 100, actually.
Because there was 7 that were sent. You're right, yes. 6,
Reynald was one
there
of
was
them.
6 knights that were sent. Yeah. Right. did the High Septon send Lancel to send a subtle message to Cersei that I know what you did?
And is the High Septon playing an even deeper game? Is he also sending Reynold to say, hey, you think this is your man, but he's here representing me.
Yes.
And I am so confident that he's representing me that I'll send him as my emissary.
Yeah.
You can try to lure him back to your side if you want while he's there. It won't work. And by the way, I know Lancel's secrets.
Yes, maybe. It's very subtle, but if I were Cersei, I might be thinking that is what's going on here.
But the whole point of this visit is to try and close down the brothels on the road of silk, the street of silk.
Yeah.
But it turns out that Cersei is absolutely adamantly opposed to this because there's a couple of reasons. One is that the brothels are necessary for trade. Sailors won't come to King's Landing if the brothels are all closed down. They'll find other cities to go to. So that's important. But also, we kind of forget, but Tyrion put a tax on brothels.
Well, technically, Tywin did and they call it the dwarf's penny.
Oh, that's right. It was Tywin. I remembered it being the dwarf's penny, so I just assumed it was Tyrion. But that's right. It was Tywin.
He got blamed for it.
Yeah. But she's very much relying on that.
Yeah.
So she So the combination of that, but this puts her in a bind because now she's saying absolutely not to the faith. Meanwhile, Lancel Lannister is standing there containing secrets that, if saw the light of day, would bring Cersei Lannister down immediately.
Right. Yeah.
And so that is a scary thing for her to be in, I would think.
Yeah, she doesn't seem all that scared about it.
Not as scared as she should be, honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So she's got quite a lot of contempt for Grand Maester Pycelle, as you already know. just in case you'd missed that. She does not care for Grand Maester Pycelle. And he's worried for Giles Rosby. But her worry is only about how his death would inconvenience her.
Right.
She doesn't care if Rosby lives or dies. She just cares about the fact it would create a space on the small council that the Tyrells would try to fill. Honestly, I don't think she needs to worry too much because Mace is out of town. Yeah. Margaery's in mourning, or her focus is on that. She could replace Giles Rosby with whoever she wants, and no one would stop her. I don't think.
Agreed. But Cersei indicates that she thinks someone is trying to kill Rosby, which really perplexes Grand Maester Pycelle, which, quite honestly, is a common reaction from him to her lately. He's been on the small council, he tells her, 42 years, and he seems completely unequipped to deal with Cersei's antics, which kind of suggests that possibly she's as erratic and unpredictable, if not more so, than the Mad King, because he said on the Mad King's small council as well.
That's a very good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. I hadn't even thought of that, but yeah, I mean, maybe he's less quick on his feet than he was back then.
That's true. Could be.
Because he is in his 80s now. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. I mean, he got through that period, and that period must have been very difficult for people who weren't lunatics in the small council.
So you'd think he would know how to handle outlandish accusations and all the things that he's dealing with,
such as the basic accusation that he's killing Giles Rosby, which clearly he has no motivation to do.
No, she suggests 3 suspects. It could be so she says some out loud and some in her head, really. Out loud, she says, it could be his heir. And then she thinks to herself, it could be the Tyrells. And then she says out loud, it could be you. And if we go through those, first of all, this is the second time that Giles's heir has been brought up in these vague terms. Remember, Felice and Balman were treated inhospitably by the Rosby heir when they stopped in Rosby on the way to King's Landing.
Yep.
You would expect that if this heir is related to him in some way, that they would use the heir's name, not just his heir, which is kind of fishy a little bit.
Yep.
But then the Tyrells is just pure paranoia.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
Well, that's the create a space on the small council that they can fill with the Tyrell loyalists.
Right.
That's what she's thinking
Yes,
there.
it is. And she's always...
That everybody on the small council that they didn't appoint is a target for the Tyrell's assassination.
Yeah, you're exactly right. She's always thinking of ways that they're trying to sabotage her, which, it somewhat, in a lot of ways, goes back to that coin that was found in Rugen's chambers, which just has exacerbated her paranoia. Yeah. And if that was a setup, if someone staged that to make it look like the Tyrells, it is doing exactly whatever that person who hopes it would do.
100%.
But and then the third one is Pycelle, and as you said, could I see him poisoning Qyburn? Yes. If I was Qyburn, I'd have a taster tasting all of my food. And he did let one of his patients, Jon Arryn, die, but only because he thought Cersei wanted him dead.
The one thing I'll say is he's so wrong-footed by Cersei that if the Tyrells came to him and said, you know what, it'd be really handy for us if you'd kill Giles Rosby so we can get a Tyrell loyalist into the small council, that he might do that. He might help the Tyrells. I just don't think the Tyrells plot as much as Cersei thinks they do.
I agree. Yeah.
So there's a comical juxtaposition between Cersei avowing that to protect Tommen from all hurt, she would kill half the lords and all the small folk in the kingdom.
Yep.
It's 12 hours since she sent the child to flog his own whipping boy for his not unreasonable insolence when she said she was going to cut his wife's tongue out.
Right. Yeah, that is quite the... That's quite the 180 she pulls person. Right there. Yeah.
But you know what? I will say she believes it. She honestly believes it, that she's really trying to protect Tommen. But some of her protecting Tommen is to brutally abuse him psychologically so that he will be a stunted person for the rest of his life.
And completely dependent upon her.
Well, that's a fringe benefit, I suppose. Yeah.
But I wonder in his reaction, which was he was quite angry. It was quite a severe reaction to cutting Margaery's tongue out. Could we possibly be seeing a slight allegiance shift away from Cersei, and that's what caused her to react so harshly? And I wonder if the punishment, poor Pate, might backfire and drive him further toward the sweet, loving Margaery and away from the mother who's having him whip boys until they bleed.
Yeah. She doesn't think that far through. She doesn't. She sees a problem. She whips it.
Right.
She doesn't realize she might be making it worse.
Yes, and we'll get to that here shortly. A problem that she created by reacting without thought. But one final thing about all that is, you mentioned that she would kill half the lords and all the small folk to keep Tommen safe. That has Mad King vibes to me.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. He wanted to do it just for the heck of it, but she has a reason at least.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was willing to blow up King's Landing in order to make sure that no one else got the Red Keep, basically, got the Iron Throne.
I would say that's crazier than protecting your child.
Yes.
But only by degrees.
Right.
It's all in the crazy camp, for sure. So Cersei has this dream, and every facet of Maggy the Frog's predictions have come true to date. Interestingly, I didn't know this until now, but Maggy provides the number of Robert's bastards. And I wonder, I never thought about this before, but did Cersei use that number in her slaughter of the innocents that followed Robert's death?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because she can't have known them all personally. She definitely didn't know them all personally, but it must have been hard for her to establish who all of them were. But I bet in her mind, because of Maggie, she had this number of 16. But I think we know of 3 that got away,
Yep.
right? Maya Stone, Gendry, and Edric Storm
Yep.
are 3 that we know escaped that. We don't know if there were others that escaped it.
Correct. Yes. We know some that didn't,
Right.
like Baby Bera. We know she did not
Yes.
escape.
Yes.
But yeah, you're right. Absolutely. I mean, this dream, that prophecy is ingrained in every fiber of her
Yeah.
being. There's no way that the number 16
How
wasn't
could it
in
not
her head.
be? It's so perfectly coming true.
Yes,
you
right.
know?
Yeah. But as far as the rest of the dream goes, we've learned or heard most of it in previous Cersei chapters. We also did learn that in Storm of Swords, we learned that Maggy the Frog, the witch in this dream, was the grandmother of Sybil and Rolf Spicer. They have a third sibling too, I believe. Sybil is the mother of Jane Westerling.
Wow, I'd forgotten that.
Yeah, so remember she mentioned about how her father up-jumped a spice trader. That's how Spicer got its start.
Yeah.
But I was just going to mention, I think we discussed previously about the Valancourt, that some people, the obvious thought is it's Tyrion, because that's what Cersei 100% believes, that it's Tyrion. But
Right.
there's been some discussion over the 11 years since a new book has come out that
No pressure, Mr. Martin.
that maybe it could be Jaime, because Jaime is the younger of the 2 twins, so he is technically her Valancourt as well. However,
Right.
at least in the dream, Maggy the Frog says that the Valancourt will choke her with his 2 hands, plural. And maybe he could prop one hand up against one side of the throat and then use the other hand, but with his golden hand he could maybe.
Yes, you could probably kill someone with that thing, but it's a good point. It is a specific point that is not true about
because he
being the Valancourt.
specifically says choke her. Now maybe that's metaphorical, but still.
Yeah.
And Qyburn explains that Maggie is a Westerosi mistranslation for Magi or Magi, however you want to say the Asasi term for someone who uses blood magic like Miri Mazdor.
Yep. Just like last week, I'm wondering again about how impervious prophecies are to intervention.
Uh-huh.
She's thinking about killing Margaery, and believing that if she can kill Margaery, she can save Myrcella and Tommen. That the part of the prophecy tells her that she'll bury all 3 of her children.
Yeah.
So, can she kill Margaery to save Myrcella and Tommen? Goes back to what she was saying. She would kill half the lords and all the small folk. All of that is just up to speculation. Maybe she can stop the prophecy if she tries, if she intervenes. But my question to you is, I mean, you can't answer this question, but she doesn't know that Daenerys is also a younger queen who could take everything from her. It may not be Margaery that features in this prophecy at all. It may be Daenerys that's talking.
Absolutely. And my personal opinion is I think it's supposed to be Daenerys that the
I do too. I do
to.
too, all along. Yeah. And in many ways it's the Cersei flaw to focus on this, and because of Margaery, she's focused on someone who just doesn't matter. Margaery is never going to be that powerful of a player here. She's doing a good job of courting and sort of like recruiting Tommen to her side, but her side is not that far away from Cersei's side. Daenerys' side is 180 degrees, and when I say 180 degrees, I mean Celsius away from... She's going to roast Cersei and all her children.
Yes, absolutely. But to answer the question, clearly Qyburn thinks ending Margaery, killing Margaery ends the threat of the prophecy. Whether, he doesn't know that might be the wrong younger queen.
True enough.
But Yeah, he seems to think, well, you know what he says to her. You know what you need to do if you want to stop this prophecy.
Yeah, and I will say, growth from Cersei. She basically rejects that plot because she thinks if somebody murders Margaery, that's going to blow back on me. And that is miraculous growth for me, for Cersei, because that's the kind of thing she would go, really? You would do that for me? Go ahead and do it.
Right.
But she's absolutely right in this case. She can't just get away with that. That would bring down the Tyrells upon her in an instant.
Yeah.
So, yay for Cersei growth, I suppose.
Maybe. Yay for very small miracles, I guess. But one thing about, just to wrap up this dream part and Cersei's sleeping issues here, I love the detail that Cersei considers herself basically, as she thinks she's going to be considered the greatest ruler in Westerosi history, and that she's the smartest and most cunning and brave of all the other kings and hands of the kings, but yet she's afraid to sleep alone.
Yeah.
She always has someone. If it wasn't Tiana the past 2 nights, she had Dorcas sleeping with her this particular night, and Jocelyn with her the previous night, I believe.
Yeah, I wonder how Simon and Mackelly's PR firm would deal with this idea of Cersei. If Cersei came to us and said, I want to be remembered as the greatest ruler in the history of Westeros, be like, well, okay, we've got a few things we want to do with you, because it'd be difficult, because you'd have to tread the fine line, because she doesn't want you to tell her to do things differently. She thinks she's already doing what she needs to do, but she is a million miles away.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We'll probably start with, okay, first, when you have an idea, sleep on it for a little bit. Don't just react, because that's how you get yourself into trouble.
Alone or with someone, but sleep on.
Right, yes.
So on the subject of Qyburn, he has inadvertently foiled Cersei's plans with Felice. Now, it was Cersei's fault. She gave Felice to Qyburn with no restrictions, and he did what Qyburn does. Mm-hmm. It is unusual to see her so forgiving of others' failures to anticipate her future needs, though. Is she perhaps a little bit afraid of Qyburn?
That's a good question. I hadn't thought about whether she's afraid of him or not. First of all, this is one of the instances I was referring to when I said sleep on a rash decision. Right, don't just give Felice to Qyburn.
Felice could have slept in a regular place in King's Landing the night before she was given to Qyburn.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Good question about being afraid of Qyburn. I wonder if she was just thinking, because she didn't put any restrictions on what he was to do.
Right.
All she said was make sure she never sees the light of day again, basically.
Right. But she gave him carte blanche to do what she wants, and then she regretted it and wished she had Felice back. But the thing is, that's totally her fault. That's 100% her fault. But that doesn't stop Cersei from lashing out at the people who didn't do what she wanted, And
right.
But in this instance, she didn't. She was entirely conciliatory towards Qyburn, and it just struck me as a little bit odd.
Yeah, I just have to say, poor Felice and Sinel and the puppeteers. I don't know what Qyburn is doing down there, but it sounds absolutely terrifying.
You know what I'm going with? I'm going with he's smuggling them out of there to live a happy life on a farm in the country.
I hadn't thought of that idea. That's fantastic. Yeah. That's what he's doing.
Qyburn just keeps this mystique of horror.
Yes.
But he actually is. So what's at the end? We get Cersei's conversation with Osmond Kettleback.
Yep.
Where she wants to know if Osney is good enough to beat Sir Boros Blunt. Osmond has no doubt. Yeah, he could beat him, no problem. So, it seems to me that what her plan is, she's going to get Osney to confess to sleeping with Margaery Tyrell, putting them both in mortal danger. Osney then asks for trial by combat. She puts up Boros Blunt as her champion. Osney beats Boros Blunt, thus saving him from the chop, and Osney gets away with it. But Margaery no longer has a champion. Loras is out of the picture, and so she's still on the chopping block. Is that how you saw this plan?
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing, right? Because they already had a plan in place where Osney was going to sleep
that didn't
Margaery.
seem to be going...
Yeah.
Right, but it didn't seem to be getting there for Cersei, so I think...
Yeah, so yeah, it's the question... Everything else makes sense, right? Everything else kind of falls in place. Like Osney, guilty of treason for sleeping with Margaery. We know that Cersei's been on the lookout for other lovers among the courtiers. And, so possibly it's just a ramping up of this plan due to urgency. But the issue comes in with the question about Osney's skill versus Boris Blunt's skill. Because clearly Boris Blunt is going to play some role as a trial by combat champion. So either Cersei's going to have only make Boris Blunt available for Margaery, and then Osney will fight Boris Blunt to see who is guilty, I guess, possibly.
Oh, I see. Like a head-to-head.
Yes.
But if he says, I slept with her, then either they're both guilty or they're both not guilty.
Right,
surely.
yeah. So that one's complicated. Oh.
Okay. Well, we'll see how it transpires. We don't have to keep speculating.
One thing that seems possibly like it's out the window is the plan for Osney to do this and then go to the Wall and kill Jon Snow. That was part of the original plan, was you get committed, you get, convicted of treason by sleeping with Margaery. I'll make sure Tommen sends you to the Wall where you'll kill Jon Snow, and once you've done that, we'll pardon you and bring you back and make you a lord and my paramour.
That clearly has dropped out of her mind at this point. At the moment,
it seems, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's do some spoilers. You can get the spoilers if you join the upper tiers of the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer. All right. Thank you. Those were excellent spoilers. Now to background.
All right. Well, so the trio of girls that go to visit Maggy the Frog included Cersei, Melara Heatherspoon, and Jane Fairman. Jane, as Cersei realizes now with an adult brain, was the smart one who ran away when Maggy woke up. And Cersei thinks to us that Jane is still living on Fair Isle, and she's married to one of her lord brother's bannermen and has had a dozen kids. Well, her husband is Sir Gareth Clifton. House Clifton is a knightly house that is a vassal to the Farmans. So here's what I can tell you about House Farman. They're the lords of Fair Isle, which is off the western coast, kind of north of Lannisport a bit. This house is a very old house, dating all the way back to the Dawn Age and the First Men. The head of House Farman used to rule as kings until they bent their knee to King Tommen the First Lannister, not to be confused with King Tommen Baratheon the First. Unsurprisingly, those from Fair Isle are known for their hatred of the Ironborn, which probably is the case for many along the western coast of Westeros.
Yep.
House Farman's seat is Fair Castle, and their lord is Jane's older brother, Sebastian. Their sigil is 3 silver ships on blue, bordered in crimson and gold, and their words are, "The wind, our steed."
No, I like those words.
Yeah, me too.
Those are good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, comparison with a television show, we did see the interaction with Maggy as a season 5 opening flashback. And the conversation is verbatim, except Robert is given 20 kids instead of 16, just for no apparent reason.
Okay.
Loras' story is one of the most divergent in the whole book TV comparison. He's not even in the King's Guard. There is no Iron Island attack on the Reach. There is no siege of Dragonstone. None of this happens. So Loras does join the Faith Militant. There's no Felice, there's no Taena Merryweather, but the plots against Margaery, yes, there are plots against Margaery. Those there are.
Okay.
So most of the rest of this is not captured.
All right.
Pedantry, I didn't have any pedantry here. Did you?
No, me either. It's been a while. We're becoming very pedantryless.
Yeah, typos. That's what we're looking for now. Typos is all we've got. Really.
The editors are getting much better.
Yeah. News and notes.
Well, George Martin wrote on his blog, which is called Not a Blog, about his time in Amsterdam, or as he likes to call it, Bravos, on his recent trip to Europe. He let it be known that although some aspects of Bravos were taken from Venice, he's never actually been there, so most of Bravos is modeled off of Amsterdam. He says that there's actually more canals in Amsterdam than in Venice, and yes, he was shocked to learn that as well. He mentioned getting back to a story that he had in mind for HBO that takes place in Bravos, but HBO shelved that idea, but he said, just because they shelved it doesn't mean he can't write about it himself, once he finishes Winds of Winter, of course.
Did he say that?
He did say that, yes.
Or did you add that?
He actually said, he wrote that anyway.
I will say, the amount of canals in Venice is actually quite small because Venice is a very small city. There's way more miles of canal in Birmingham than there are in Venice. It's not very special for it to be. Yeah. But yeah, that is interesting that there's Amsterdam in Bravos. I did not know that. We told you in a previous episode that Christian Nairn wrote a memoir called Beyond the Throne, and it was not just the word Hodor multiple times. George Martin mentioned at the time that he hoped Christian would stop at Santa Fe during his American tour. And wouldn't you know it, he's going to do just that. He'll be signing at Beastly Books, which is George's own store. Unfortunately, by the time you hear this, it'll have already happened. The signing's on Halloween. I'm sure it would have been a fun time for everyone who got to see it.
That's right. And we have a new Buy Me a Coffee sustainer. The Titan's daughter has joined us at the Squire tier, so that's exciting. Thank you very much for that.
Yes, welcome the Titan's daughter.
Yes,
that's exciting.
It is.
Nice to meet you. All right, let's conclude this one. So, utter tragedy for the Tyrells. This chapter feels like we forgot about this, but Loras Tyrell has been essentially killed.
Yeah.
Perhaps could be saved, but he's clearly very, very badly injured. That is a tragedy. I mean, he was a beautiful character, and he's lost his life at Cersei's machinations. Let's not forget, he only did this because he was trying to protect the Reach.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
He only needed to do this because Cersei wanted him to do this.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good point. Definitely worth pointing out. Yeah, it's been a while since George had killed off a major character, and Loras wasn't the most major of characters, but he was a pretty important character.
He mattered.
Yeah.
But funnily enough, actually, his last two major kill-offs perhaps were Loras and the Hound, both of which are dubious that they were actually killed off.
Yes, you're right. No, they were both killed off screen with no necessarily proof.
And not everyone believes that they're dead. Margaery certainly thinks that Loras could be revived.
Yeah, and that made me, I was thinking about this when I was reading this chapter. All of this is based off of the word of Aurane Waters. We're assuming that he is being on the up and up. We have no reason to doubt, considering she promoted him into this role. But before she promoted him into Grand Admiral, he was nobody. He's a bastard of Driftmark. And House Valerian, the Lords of Driftmark, were a Stannis supporter. So, I don't know.
But then again, that's how you get loyalty, right?
Yeah.
You give people something that they wouldn't otherwise have got. You're going to have their loyalty. So probably he's not going to. All of this is, of course, great news for Cersei, and she's absolutely delighted with it. What's less good for Cersei is the news coming from both the Iron Bank of Bravos and the Faith.
Oh, yeah.
Both of whom are tightening nooses around her neck, but it seems like she's oblivious to both. She's discounting both of their pleas. The pleas are coming to her not necessarily directly anymore because the Iron Bank of Bravos have tried and she said no, but the merchants who are suffering at the hands of the Iron Bank of Bravos are more important to her than she realizes.
You're absolutely right. And as far as the Faith Militant goes, they've already collected 100 knights, and that's not even including the Poor Fellows, which is the small folk arm of the Faith Militant. And I think it just boils down to her narcissism, her ignorance, and her hubris, that she's not even thinking about this as a threat. it just doesn't register that this is something that she might not be able to control fully if it continues to grow at the pace that it's growing.
That was a nice trio there. Narcissism, hubris,
ignorance, I believe, were the three.
Very nice, yeah. Funnily enough, actually, someone levied a trio of comments upon my writing earlier today. They called it, verbose, pompous, and self-indulgent. Couldn't argue. Three of my favorite things.
Oh boy, what? That's something. Okay, well,
Funnily enough, I'll tell you what it was. So I've become regular season champion of the soccer league at work.
Okay, now it's starting to make sense. Okay.
And the only reason I'm regular season champion is because the algorithm that calculates the finishing table uses a different criteria for tiebreakers than the stated rules use.
Okay, that's surprising, but...
Well, the algorithm uses the natural and easiest thing, which is goal differential. If you've got the same points, look at your goal differential. Goals scored minus goals conceded. But the rules state that use a mini league of the people who are tied, and it's very, very complicated. So that rule is like 28 lines long, and apparently I wrote it. So
it worked.
But I never agreed with it. I may have written it, but I never agreed with it. I thought it was a terrible idea. I do not remember writing it. As if
it worked in your favor at this in this particular instance.
Well, it didn't because I only won by the algorithm's rule. I lost by my written rule.
Oh, I see. Yes. Okay.
But
right.
We're going with the algorithm rule, so I'm okay. We won the title.
Right. Well, back to the story.
What are we talking about? Oh, Game of Thrones.
Yes. We were talking about trouble brewing with the Iron Bank of Bravos and the Faith. There's also more specifically trouble brewing with Cersei in the fact that her cousin Lancel was staring her in the face earlier in this chapter.
I think you have to be a narcissist not to be absolutely petrified by his presence.
Yeah.
She's concerned, but if you weren't so completely full of yourself, you would be like, you would murder him there and then to silence him.
Yeah.
You know? It's absolutely, he's a disaster waiting for her.
Yep. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And on the subject of disasters, her parenting of Tommen, I mean, just horrible. You know, she might turn him into another Joffrey. I think his instincts are not Joffrey-like, but the way she's treating him. Honestly, I think Margaery might save Tommen from becoming a Joffrey.
No, you're right. That's very possible. Yeah.
Margaery is a positive influence. And again, what Cersei doesn't understand is that Margaery's kindness and support of Tommen aren't necessarily based in Tyrell machinations.
Right.
They're just Margaery thinking about what my life will be like with Tommen.
Yeah.
You know?
Margaery is a 16-year-old girl married to an 8-year-old boy. She could ignore him like he's a one of those empty statues of armor, you know, in the hallway there somewhere. But she is taking an active interest in, you know, developing a relationship with him. And Cersei should, as the mother of Tommen, at some level, be appreciative of this fact, but she absolutely would prefer that Margaery stay out of the way when it comes to Tommen.
And has her tongue cut out.
Right,
honestly.
yeah.
And again, Cersei continues to hatch these schemes against Margaery that could work, could backfire. We shall see.
Yeah, that's right. We'll see. She's certainly spending a lot of time and a lot of brain power focused on bringing Margaery down.
Next week we have Brienne. And in the meantime, there's 3 ways that you can help us. You could leave us a positive review. You could buy us a cup of our gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhal. There you can join us at any of the various sustainer levels. There's a tier to match your budget and interest. Join, for instance, at the Squire tier, like the Titan's daughter did. Or you can make a donation directly to our cause at ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, well, you can always send us a text these days. There's a link at the top of every episode's show notes. And if you're looking to keep up on the latest Ghost of Harrenhal news and developments, well, you can check us out on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.